We're going to take this 8.8 out of a Fox body and we're going to put it in the G-body wagon. Now I found this rear end on Craigslist for 175 bucks. It is a 373 Ford Performance rear end with a posi, which is a huge upgrade from the 7.5 end open differential that I have right now.
So the first thing we need to do is take a couple measurements. The first of which is our wheelbase. We need to find out what our wheelbase is before we do our axle install so that we make sure we don't overextend the lower and more specifically the upper control arms in the Trick Chassis kit. Now to measure your wheelbase, you're gonna need a helper. Where's my helper? All right, come here, big guy. Can you grab this and go measure? Over there. Yeah. The stock G-body wheelbase is a little over 108 inches. The last measurement I made was the driveline length. It is important, if you don't want to pay to have your driveline shortened or lengthened, that you take your driveline length and then try to adjust your rear axle so that you can meet that same length within a ½ inch either way. Next, we need to install some suspension components. To do that, I've ordered this kit from Trick Chassis that will adapt the Ford 8.8 to go into the family burnout wagon or any other G-body. Now, in addition to cleaning it out, I've gone through and I've taken down some high casting marks that may have gotten in the way of its heating all the way. Clean up the threads, just a dab of Loctite. And you can see that it's made it up and there's no gap in between the axle housing and the new bushing. So part of the problem with this rear end is that it's an open differential, which means there's nothing that ties these two together to spin in the same direction. The problem with that is whenever you're doing a burnout or whenever one tire loses traction, the rear end sends all the torque to that tire and the other tire just stays stationary.
Now that we removed the stock 7.5 inch G-body axle, we'll need to remove the spring perches and transfer them over to the new 8.8. You can order them from Trick Chassis and weld on a new set.
Before I cut this off, the center of this spring perch right here to this spring perch right here, I marked out as 34 inches. I verified that this is the center line from that backing plate to this backing. That gives me a difference from the center line to each spring perch of 17 inches. So all I have to do with the new rear end is find the center line of it and then go 17 inches out. And that's the new center line for my spring perch. Next, I'm going to find out what my driveline angle is compared to the zero of these spring perches, and that way I know where on the axle to align those. Looks like 85 degrees, so they're 5 degrees back. The next thing we're going to do is remove the stock spring perches from the 7.5 axle and transplant them over to this 8.8. The 8.8 axle doesn't have provisions for the brake line mounting tabs, so I have to weld these bolts on to make sure that they're securely fastened whenever it's installed in the car. 7.5 inch rear end in this location has bump stops, so we definitely don't want these to frame.
Now we'll use the stock bolts to align the Trick Chassis brackets while we weld them in.
He's in there now, no turning back. Now, if you order the lower control arm kit from Trick Chassis, it'll come with these two here arms, but then it'll come with 8 bushings like this. There's 4 wider ones and 4 skinnier ones. Now the skinnier ones go up top up there, and the wider ones go right here to take up the space for the 8.8 axle. This bolt may not be quite long enough. Now I know that Trick Chassis sells a bolt kit, and that this is kind of what it's for, is to make up for this distance. I like to have the nut thickness plus 2 threads, and that's just not going to be possible without this. So I have one more setback. Now this was an optional part, something you could order with the kit for the 8.8 swap, was this U-joint, 2-1569 HD. This one is for a 1330 knuckle, but what I have here is a 1310. The 1310 replacement, I got at AutoZone, and it is a 3-3130DL. For a side-by-side comparison, 3.65 one's here at 3.217. Whole width of this is 3.50. You can see here that the C-clip mounting points are inboard of that. So I would recommend measuring the 8.8 mounting flange carrier for the U-joint before you order the kit. You know which one you have. And then we'll set it up with a little bit of grease before we install it so we know it's done. You see just a little bit of grease start to squeeze out. That's as far as we want to go. Time to check our pinion angle. The car is supporting its own weight. Everything's installed, both my upper and lower control arms. The only things we haven't done is we haven't locked down these jam nuts. Right now it's supported at its ride height, and what we're shooting for is 3 degrees of negative pinion. And the reason we're doing that is because we want, whenever we hit the gas, we expect it to come up that's 3 degrees and be dead on, so that it puts the least amount of stress on this U-joint possible. Once it's loaded, it will take out that pre-adjustment. So what we want to do is we want to take this guy here, and we're going to check this. And I don't know if you can see that, but my eye's dead on it at 2 and some change negative. So we're a little this way. So the drive shaft is down a little bit. Now we want the pinion angle of this to be down a little bit as well. So now we're going to check here. We can check here actually. So we'll check here, and if I hold that to where it feels like it's perfectly flat on here, that gives us a 5.5 or a 6. So our 2.5 minus 5.5 is going to put us right at our 3 degrees, which is our desired drive shaft pinion angle. So that's perfect. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to make some other measurements to make sure our rear end is square, but pinion angle is perfect. Another measurement that's important to take is the entire length of your lower control arms here. Now, if you get the adjustable ones from Trick Chassis, you'll need to set them up to about 18.5 inches as a starting point. That should get you in the ballpark, and make sure that you don't overextend your upper control arms. For your upper control arms, the maximum extension should be whenever you have the width of the rod end still inside of the tube. It's about 3/4 of an inch or 5 threads. Now remember, your car may require different lengths for each side. Your final adjustment's going to come whenever you adjust your wheelbase for the 108 inches, and that's going to be completely dependent on how beat up your car is. Another critical measurement to make is to center your axle. And to do that, you're going to compare the sides, and you're going to try to make sure that one axle side is not any different than the other. Mine is about 7 inches away from the frame from the end of the hub, but yours may be different because I'm using custom axles. So all you want to do is, within 1/8 of an inch or so, make sure that your axle's centered up in the frame rails. You can adjust the centering of your axle by making sure that your car is at ride height with weight on the axle, and that you use the upper 2 control arms, pushing one in and one out, the same number of threads, to move your axle over with regard to center in the car. Now, one of the things that's very important to do with Heim joints is make sure that you center them up in their travel so that you have the full range of motion. First thing I'm going to do is put a dab of blue Loctite, and I like the blue Loctite because I don't need heat to take it off. Run it on. Use this nut down here to hold on to it. Hold it stationary, keep it from spinning, and then tighten this guy down. Now that that one's tightened down, mash them both over to one side, put a dab more Loctite, run it down, tighten her down, and now we have full movement on both ends. This is torque stripe. It's standard practice in aviation to mark where you set an adjustable joint to make sure that if it ever breaks loose and starts to rotate, you're aware of it immediately just by the fact that this will have broken between the 2 points. To finish up this installation, there's only one thing that I need to do. I need to make sure that my speedometer is showing an appropriate speed, and right now it's not. So I've called up the people at TCI Transmissions, and they were really helpful. I told them my wheel diameter, my gear ratio, what transmission I have, and they were able to tell me what combination of gears I needed to get to put in my transmission to make sure that my speedometer was reading appropriately.